So I guess we could jump into one more story that it's not going to be a long story, but I think it's something worth mentioning because these guys were one of the biggest names pretty much at one point on the PlayStation 4 generation, unfortunately for them.
Infamously, yeah.
Yeah, so it seems like Hello Games is back with a new game. So No Man's Sky developer Hello Games has a portion of its team working on a quote-unquote huge, ambitious new project that's very early in development. And there was an interview with Polygon. Studio founder Sean Murray explained that Hello Games is now made up of 26 people, and that's crazy that this name has been ringing through the industry for years now at this point, is less than 30 people. That's crazy. Yep. 3 have been working on a new Hello Games short, The Last Campfire. The other remaining 23 are split between working on updates for No Man's Sky and a brand new project that Sean Murray is calling a huge, ambitious game like No Man's Sky. But it's not a sequel, and he's not exactly sure how to talk about this game early because obviously No Man's Sky was hyped beyond belief. Obviously, some of that fault goes onto Sean Murray, but some of that fault also goes onto PlayStation, which propped this game out damn near to feel like a first-party release. Yeah. And so everybody, in many ways, kind of treated this game kind of like a new PlayStation game. And when it came out, it was very much an indie game. It was an algorithm. It was a generator. It was this exploration game that was going to be filled out over time. It was a games as a service half kind of experience. Also a tech demo. But people treated this like this expansive universe, Skyrim, open world type thing when it was not that. And naturally, obviously, they got tremendous blowback. And blowback onto a game studio like Naughty Dog is tough. Imagine if you're less than 30 people, how that feels. Mm-hmm. Where people weren't even really talking about you that much to begin with beforehand. From now, it feels like the world hates you. You're public enemy number one. That must have been brutal. And I highly suggest you check out this interview because it's really interesting hearing from Sean Murray post that whole controversy. And not to mention, say what you want about No Man's Sky. It's not my type of game. I really feel like screwed up the launch, obviously, but you got to give them credit. They stuck by it, and the game as it exists now is more than they initially promised. So not only did they deliver on everything that they said they were, eventually they delivered. They delivered on more, and now this has really turned out to be a really awesome experience that not only has multiplayer, not only has these random encounters like they showed off in that initial trailer and extraterrestrial thing and all these different exploration and different abilities and different planet sets and life is more varied than it ever was. They really delivered something quite remarkable for such a small team, and so obviously there's immense talent at this studio. That it was a communication issue and it was a marketing issue. Ultimately, it wasn't a talent issue. Is they communicated something that was going to take years to realize, but they marketed it as if this is what you were going to get day one. And that, again, is partly Hello Games' fault, partly Sony's fault. So first off, how do you feel about No Man's Sky in 2020? And also, is this a project that you're interested in checking out, considering the fact that Hello Games has been so rife with controversy?
So, I was excited. Actually, you were the first person to bring No Man's Sky to my attention one time. And I pre-ordered it. I went and picked it up on launch day after I watched a lot of trailers and the interviews with, Murray and everything like that. And obviously, day one, I was like, nope. No. It was, not anything near what they promised. Super boring, all that stuff like that. I maybe played it another time after that, and then it sat on my shelf for a long time. I may have even sold it because I don't see it here behind me. Or I may have lent it to somebody and they just took it. But what a redemption story, for them. Because, they quickly started working on it hard. They could have abandoned this game and probably would have shot themselves in the foot. And Hello Games would be just infamous and red marked. People would know that's, the Scarlet A on them because they made a horrible game and then abandoned people who purchased it. So I got to commend them and huge props because from my understanding, though they re-released it, if you had the original one, you got all these updates for free. I could be wrong. There may be some pay ones, but from my understanding...
all the major expansions were free.
Yeah, the Beyond one, which was almost like a sequel. I did see someone play that one. It was almost... It looked like a sequel.
Yeah, they fixed it up a lot.
And it was there for that. And I remember working at GameStop when this first like revamp came out, people were excited. People were like, it was bad at launch, but it's super good now, and all these stuff, and Twitch streamers and all that really helped on it. And they just kept adding and adding, and they added like better multiplayer, and they added better, mechanics and the surviving rate and the survival aspect, to the point that I even believe it has PSVR compatibility.
Yeah, I believe so.
All still for free, which is, I've been wanting to go back to this game for a long time, especially once they hit me with that VR stuff, and I just haven't yet. I put it in my cart constantly. I see it on a sale, I want to get it. But, a big shout out to them for sticking by their vision, sticking by their fans. You earn a lot of points that way, which is why I'm way more excited for their sequel. The Last Campfire is not, well, not the sequel, sorry, but the next game. The Last Campfire looks good, but now I want to see, which is like a small, they're a smaller game. But now, what does the new game look like? I'm glad it's not a No Man's Sky sequel, because you guys have been spending years on this, on the same game. I've lived in 4 different places in the time frame that I remember living in my parents' basement when the game came out. I've been to 2 different apartments and gone back to my parents' basement, and now I'm in another apartment. In the time that you guys have been working and revamping this game, so people got their money's worth, and you did it. So you guys, I assume, now I have to assume, because we never know, that their next game will not be releasing in such a bad state. I'd rather them take their time, work on it, obviously, in advance. That's why I'm glad they're very cautious on discussing it. They're not talking about how it's gonna, they're not saying that it's gonna surpass what they did with No Man's Sky. They want to keep expectations low, because they don't even know yet. They know they cannot come out again like this, because then no one's going to buy your game until 4 years after you release it, and that's a horrible strategy, and that's not going to be good for you. So I'm excited. They have my praise, and they have my confidence. I'm confident they're going to release whatever it is. It'll be good. It'll be interesting. Be cautious. That you should be cautious with every developer and stuff like that in this day and age. But I think Hello Games knows that they could have shut down. No Man's Sky could have been the death of them, and they used it to really rise from the ashes.
Yeah, and what interests me the most, No Man's Sky I was excited for when it came out, but the exploration and the sci-fi aesthetic and all those things is not what interested me in Hello Games and No Man's Sky specifically. It was always the tech and the fact that this small team had this insane auto-generator universe maker algorithm. And again, I'm not a super tech guy, but I'm super fascinated by that, because it's beyond the applications of what Hello Games was able to do with it. I'm just curious about what they do. Let's say if they use this engine or this generator or whatever you call it in a city thing, where they make imagine a cyberpunk-esque game, but instead of generating a universe randomly for you, they generate a city randomly for you with random occupants, different species, in this kind of futuristic world, different vehicles, different aesthetic. Maybe you're in a neo-noir city in one thing, and then you go to another city and it's super cyberpunky, and another one is a dystopian type look of it. How interesting would that be if they take this generator and apply it in different ways? And again, I don't know how malleable this generator is, and if it's built solely for planets, and I don't know how exactly that works. But I'm curious to see what, on a technical level, Hello Games does with their next game, more so than what narrative choices they make and what aesthetic choices they make. Because again, I don't know necessarily what they're fully capable of. They're a relatively young studio. They've done a couple games at this point that were very different from one another. So I think we still have a couple years ahead of us before we really know what the Hello Games motif and vibe is at this point. Again, No Man's Sky was one thing that blew them up. It catapulted their name into the cultural zeitgeist. But they're capable of a lot of different things, I'm sure. And as the team expands and the talent pool expands, they're naturally going to go into different things. So I'm more excited to see where they go with the tech, and to see if that leads into something that maybe works better off for them. So maybe they could be generating cities and different counties and stuff like that. That might work out better for them and have a better experience than maybe a randomized universe where that might feel a little bit too empty. Maybe if they try to apply it to something that's a little more densely packed, it'll resonate better with people. I'm not exactly sure. Again, everything is speculation. But I'm going to keep my eyes out for them because I feel like in many ways they got an unfair shake where people were asking stuff of them that you would never ask of any other 30-person team. But because they attached themselves, unfortunately, or they were attached to PlayStation and Sony at large, they were catapulted into demands that were normally isolated towards frickin', Sony Santa Monica. And this is a small team that they're an indie dev that should be treated such. And that doesn't mean low expectations, but that necessarily means tempered expectations.
Yep.
And kind of take what they're offering you and hold them to that. Hold them only to their own standards, not to the standards set by a publisher or anything like that. So I'm going to keep my eyes out for them, and I hope that No Man's Sky has repaired their image a little bit, showing people that they stuck by it. And yes, we know the intro was a little bit botched, but by the end, we delivered what we told you guys. And maybe starting from the ground up with a nice announcement. And again, the average consumer don't know who Hello Games is. They don't know who Sean Murray is. They know what No Man's Sky is. So if they launch a new game with a whole different title and a whole different vibe, a lot of people are not going to walk into it with all these negative feelings. Now, yeah, if they come out with No Man's Sky 2, you might be inheriting a little bit of nonsense. But if they announce a brand new game that's not even sci-fi, with maybe the same tech, but a whole different subject, a whole different, goal in mind, I feel like they won't inherit as much as they might be afraid they are. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like, obviously, Sean Murray has a lot of apprehension because one thing, you could tell he is not a PR guy. He was not this guy that meant to be selling a game. He's not a salesman. He's kind of just a game developer. And he didn't communicate things the best because I don't feel like in many ways he's a communicator. He's not a marketer. And so I feel like he's very apprehensive that he's going to walk his company back into a situation that I doubt's going to happen again, because I feel like that was kind of a perfect storm of nonsense, that there were a developer that were not ready for that fame, that were thrust into limelight, and in many ways Justin Bieber themselves, where they were not ready for all that fame.
I mean, they were on the cover of a game. I have the Game Informer. They were the cover. They were the cover story of. It's
like they did not need all that clout that early into their life cycle. So hopefully this time, I have a lot of pleasant feelings and hope for them, because I think they could right this wrong and they could turn this ship around, and their next project could ship and could be an amazing experience and can undo a lot of the nonsense that got attached to their name.
Absolutely.